Hello, and welcome back to the Librarian of the Rings. My name is Ben, I'm the librarian, and today we're going to be talking about the second part of the Silmarillion, the Valaquenta. Welcome back. This video is part of a series where we are summarizing the Silmarillion piece by piece to make it more approachable for you as you're trying to read it for the first or maybe the second or third or fourth time. We really want to make this an easier experience for people, and particularly I think that summarizing each section will help you so you have a framework as you go in and read it. Today we're going to be talking about the section known as the Valaquenta. This is the second section and follows the Ainulindale. Now we've already done a video on the Ainulindale and also a couple of other videos kind of as overview and structure on the Silmarillion, so be sure to check those out as well if you need them. Now the Valaquenta is basically Elvish for the account of the Valar, and so this section really is going to be kind of a who's who of the angelic beings of Middle-earth, the Valar, and to a lesser extent the Maiar. Now, because this is basically just a list of characters, we're going to approach this a little differently than we normally do. We're still going to talk about some vocabulary words to help you to become familiar with the words that are going to help you understand this section. And then we're also going to do major characters because that's basically all that this section is. But we aren't going to do major events and we aren't going to do major themes because there really aren't any in this section. It's basically a list of characters telling you what it is. And it's a pretty short section. It is only about 10 pages long, but it is pretty dense. Because of that, I really only want you to focus in on the characters that I tell you about here. Don't worry too much about getting every single character in this section straight. It's really more of an overview that you can come back to as you read the story. If you find a character and you don't know who they are, come back to this section, find it, and it will kind of give you an explanation of who they are. Now, some of these characters we already encountered in the Ainulindale, so they will start to become familiar to you. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about some of the vocabulary words in the Valaquenta here. First off, the Ainur. Now, the Ainur are the angelic beings, the ones who help Iluvatar to create the world. So we met them in the Ainulindale, and they are back here again. They're very important. Now, one thing to note is that when an R is added onto these words, that is the plural. So Ainur is plural, Ainu is singular. And so you'll see that with several of these words. Now, it's not really important that you make sure that you understand that, but as I go through it, I will try and use the correct form, but I will probably make mistakes as well. Now, I said the Ainur help to create the music with Iluvatar. So the next vocab word is the music or the great music. This is basically the song of creation. It is the story of the universe, and it is the thing that is playing out throughout the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings and all of Tolkien's stories about Middle-earth. The great music is being played out. Now, where is it being played out? That's our next vocab word. It's Ea. Ea is the world that is. It's essentially what we would think of as the universe, which Iluvatar speaks into existence. It is much larger than our next vocab word, which is Arda. Arda is the smaller piece. It is basically what we would think of as the world. It is the place where elves and men, who are the children of Iluvatar, live. And you can kind of think of it like the planet. This is larger than Middle-earth, which is just kind of a section of that planet. Next is the Valar. The Valar we have encountered before. They're basically the angelic beings or the gods of Tolkien's Legendarium. They are Ainur who have descended into the world, and often they've taken on a temporary bodily form. Now, not counting Melkor, there are 7 male Valar and there are 7 female Valar, for a total of 14. If you count Melkor, then it's 15. But not all of them are going to play important roles in the story, and so don't feel like you have to memorize all of their names. Our next vocab word is the Maiar. Now, the Maiar, it's plural of Maya, and those are the angelic beings of lesser degree who've entered the world, but they are still very wise and very powerful, and a few of them will play really important roles throughout the story. Okay, now let's talk about the major characters, of which there are a lot in this section because it's basically just listing them out, but I am not going to hit on every single character that's mentioned here. Like I said, there are a lot of them. It can get confusing, so let's just focus in on the ones that are going to be most important for the story. Now, some people might disagree with which ones are most important for the story. This is just my interpretation of the characters I think you most need to understand going into reading the Silmarillion. Like I said, a few of these we'll encounter before, including this first one, which is Iluvatar, also known as the One or Eru. This is the god of Tolkien's Legendarium. He is the creator of the world that is. He is also the creator of the Ainur, and his children are the elves and the Min. Those are the children of Iluvatar. He's important throughout the story, of course, but especially at the beginning when the world was being created and he's setting things in motion. And then he turns a lot of the governance of Arda over to the Valar. Next we have Manwë. Manwë is the Vala of air, and he is the brother of Melkor in the thought of Iluvatar. So they're closely associated together. Like I said, he's associated with air a lot, and so birds, and especially eagles, which you'll know are important if you've read The Lord of the Rings, are very associated with Manwë. He's the Vala that knows the most of the mind of Iluvatar, and so he tends to understand the most of the music. Then I've already mentioned Melkor a little bit. Melkor is the brother of Manwë in the mind of Iluvatar. He is the greatest of all the Ainur. He has the most potential and the most power. He takes on the role of the fallen angel figure in this story. He rebels against Iluvatar, and he will be the main antagonist throughout the story of the Silmarillion. When you're coming from The Lord of the Rings, it's good to know that he is the master of Sauron. So that really big bad guy from The Lord of the Rings, this guy is bigger and badder than him. His name is Melkor when he is a Vala, but his name will be changed to Morgoth, which means the enemy, and he will be called that throughout a lot of this book. So Morgoth and Melkor, same person. Next we have Varda. Varda is the Vala associated with light. She is the spouse of Manwë and the creator of the stars. The elves call her Elbereth, and you may be familiar with that name from The Lord of the Rings because it is used several times. The elves revere her above all others because she is the creator of the stars, which they love. She plays some important roles throughout the story, and it's good to note that she is the Vala that Melkor most fears, and that there is some history between her and Melkor that is not particularly explained, but it says that she's rejected him. So he was trying to get her onto his side, and she rejected that. And so she is one of the Valar that he is really afraid of. Next is Ulmo, who we did encounter last week in the Ainulindalë. He is the Valar of water. So he controls the seas and the rivers and the rains, and he tends to be alone of the Valar. He has no spouse, and he doesn't come to council with the other Valar very often. He tends to be very involved, though, in Middle-earth. He is the most involved with elves and men throughout much of this story, and he's going to play a particularly significant role in the story of Tuor and Gondolin. Then we have Aule. Aule is the Vala of Earth, and he is best known as the father of the dwarves. Now, he is very similar to Melkor in a lot of ways because they have very similar interests and powers, so they both do a lot of craft and smithing, and for this reason, they tend to come into conflict with each other a lot. Melkor spends a lot of his time destroying things that Aule makes. So there's a lot of conflict there between those two because of their similarities, but it's important to remember that Aule never rebels against Iluvatar. Even though he'll do some things that might not be exactly what he should do, he's never going to rebel against Iluvatar and go against the music the way Melkor does. After Aule, we have Yavanna. Now, Yavanna is the Vala that is really associated with the plant and animal life of Arda. Think of her kind of as a Mother Nature character. She is very involved, particularly with the plants, but also with the animals. Now, she is the spouse of Aule, and there is some tension between her and Aule because she loves the things that are alive, and he loves the things that can be made or created. And so there will be some tension there in the story between them and also between the things that they take care of. If you're thinking about Yavanna from a Lord of the Rings context, it's really helpful to think about the Ents, which are strongly associated with her as the dwarves are strongly associated with Aule. Yavanna's greatest work in this story, though, is going to be the creation of the two trees. The two trees are going to be one of the most critical aspects of the Silmarillion, and so you really want to pay attention to that. Next, we have Namo. Now, Namo is the one who keeps the houses of the dead, and he's never actually going to be called Namo throughout this story. Namo is his name, but the House of the Dead is called Mandos, and basically he's going to be called Mandos throughout this story. As well as keeping the Houses of the Dead, he's also the Doomsayer of the Valar. He pronounces the dooms or the fates, and that is the role we're going to see him most importantly in this story, especially when he announces what's called the Doom of Mandos onto the Noldor, which are a group of elves. Then that doom is going to play a very, very important role in the entire story. All right, the last of the Valar that we're going to talk about today today is Orome. He is the huntsman of the Valor, and he is important because he cares the most about Middle-earth, and he spends a lot of his time hunting the beasts of Melkor. So Melkor creates these horrible things, and Orome goes out and he hunts them. He rides on a powerful horse, which also has a name, but you don't need to be worried about that right now. And he is going to spend a lot of his time looking for the firstborn children of Iluvatar, who are the elves. So that's where he's going to play a major role in the story. He will eventually be the one who will lead the elves to Valinor, the ones who do go on the journey into the west. And that's a major plot in the entire story. Okay, like I said, there's a lot of other Valar that are mentioned, but those are the ones that you should worry about right now. Now we'll talk about just a few of the Maiar. There aren't nearly as many of these that are mentioned. These are the lesser beings. They tend to be associated with one of the Valar, but a few of them take on important roles in the story. The first one is Melian. Melian is going to be in this story a whole bunch because she is going to actually marry an elf, Thingol, and their daughter is Luthien. Luthien is one of the most important characters in all of Tolkien's Legendarium, and she's the predecessor of some of the really important characters that we know from The Lord of the Rings. So you'll want to pay attention to Melian. She's very important, and she has the most active role of any of the Ainur in this story. Then it also talks about a Maia named Olorin. Olorin will not play a significant role in the story of the Silmarillion at all. So why is he mentioned here? Well, because he happens to go by another name, and that's Gandalf. So obviously he becomes a really major player in The Lord of the Rings. So when you see Olorin, that's Gandalf. But like I said, not a major player in the Silmarillion, but I want you to make these connections to The Lord of the Rings, where you're probably coming from. All right, the last character and Maia that we need to talk about is called Sauron. Now you will recognize this name from The Lord of the Rings as the Dark Lord. And yes, this is the same Sauron. It's the same character. He is first a Maia that's associated with Aule, which is why he knows so much about smithing and craft, but he will eventually join forces with Melkor, become Melkor's right-hand man, and of course eventually become the main bad guy of The Lord of the Rings. So you'll see Sauron take on many roles throughout this story. Okay, so that's it for the Valaquenta. I know there is a lot here to unpack. Go ahead and read it, and then just continue on with the main section of the Silmarillion, and then refer back to it as needed. If you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, hear how you're doing with reading the Silmarillion, and now farewell wherever you fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.